see what that comes to. Banks are finally lending. This has only been true in the last 9 months. And unemployment growth is starting to gain a little bit of traction. Remember, unemployment is a lagging economic indicator, so it's not surprising. In 2010, we averaged 100,000 new jobs each month. In 2011, the country averaged 150,000 new jobs each month. And my estimates are that we're going to come in with about 200,000 new jobs each month for 2012. And you could say, well, Peter, that looks pretty good. Why don't I feel better? You know, we lost 6.5 million jobs during the recession. So, that, you know, even we go through 2012, we're still not going to be back where we were. So these are great numbers, but we really came from a very difficult position. Productivity is at record levels. The size of the U.S. economy is back to where it was in 08, but here's the caveat, with 5 million fewer jobs. Very interesting. And corporate profit levels are incredibly high. The margins are very, very high. I don't think they can actually sustain at these levels. More random thoughts. As a percentage of GDP, federal taxes are now at their lowest levels since 1950. Nationwide real estate values have declined by $7 trillion in the past 5 years. And less than 3% of what Americans spend their money on for goods and services is from China. About 88% is spent on American-made goods and services. And that's kind of a surprise to a lot of people. But services being medical services, legal services, financial services. It's a different kind of recovery. Household debt is now below average. Americans have done a great job of paying off debt since 08. Lots of household liquidity. There's $6 trillion now sitting in money market funds earning, what was it, 0. And that's a lot of dry powder that's going to eventually come in. Record corporate profits, very healthy balance sheets. And this time the recovery was led by other nations. This is the second recovery in a row led by other nations, but mainly China and India. And a lot of Americans get really antsy about that. But it's very good news. For 100 years, we were the economic kingpin. When we caught a cold economically, the rest of the world got pneumonia, and we had to pull everybody up. That's not the way it's working now. These other nations are helping to pull us up, and that's why the recession was so short-lived in terms of corporate profits. Very, very big time. I know that bothers a lot of people, but you know, listen, for 30 or 40 years we've been buying cheap plastic things from these people and teaching them about greed, and it's really starting to pay off. So it's so don't quit now, man. This is going good. Let's see. I got this in 2008. Lou Dobbs hosts Moneyline from Window Ledge. There's thought that was kind of a sad thing, really. There's And I want to say one other thing, is that this generation of students I'm teaching now is better than any generation I've ever taught. And I really mean this. And I know everybody thinks the next group's a group of slackers and they'll never be as good as us. They're better than us. They're smarter than we ever were. They care about their communities. We have mandatory community service at Tulane. We have, and the last 4 years have been amazing. We've averaged 40,000 applicants for 1,600 freshman slots. So we have more applications than any private university in the country. And then these kids are doing social entrepreneurship. They are good people. This next generation is good people. So don't be discouraged about that. Now, common sense-wise, you do run into some things. I had a student that went to go pick up his girlfriend at her parents' house, and the father comes to the door and says, "Hey, I want my daughter back by 10:15. My guy's like, "Whoa, mid-October? Cool." You know, so it's but they're good kids though. They let's see. Oh, this is a new program. I thought this was funny. Greece offers to repay bailout with giant horse. And I'm sure this will work. Let's see. Financial myth busting. These are reasons people don't do better in the markets than they do. First of all, you hear people say, "I don't want to invest in the stock market. Unemployment is high." Well, that makes sense unless you think about it. And because when unemployment is high, the government's #1 job is getting people back to work. So they lower rates, they keep them down, and they stimulate the economy, exactly what Wall Street wants. So the truth of the matter is, the market has done about twice as well when unemployment has been above 6.6 as when it's been below 6.6. So it sounds counterintuitive, but it is true. Then you hear this Thurston Howell. I always liked him. That was most Americans think we're on the wrong track. 75% of Americans now think economically we're on the wrong track. That is terrific news because most Americans are wrong. This is the greatest. Only 99 would be better than this. When I first got in this business, I was up in Boston with Kidder Peabody, and I remember an older guy pulled me aside. I had just come out of college, and he pulled me. In retrospect, I think he was like 26, but he seemed like an older guy. But he said to me, "Peter, remember, if a majority of the people were right, a majority of the people to be rich, and they're not." And I've always remembered that, and I have that tattooed on my left buttocks. And it's a good thing to remember. In the Early 1990s, 2/3 of Americans felt the country was on the wrong track, and the 90s was a great time to invest. In 2000, 80% of Americans believed the country was on the right track, and we went into the lost decade. So it's very tough to make money because you have to swim against the tide a little bit. Then you hear there's too much leverage. Companies are too levered. We'll never get any kind of recovery. That's ridiculous. If you were to take U.S. corporations and separate financial companies from non-financial companies. Now, financial companies are kind of a black box, so let's just put them over there. But non-financial companies are now more under-levered than they've been in several decades. There is more cash as a percentage of the balance sheet now than ever. $2.5 trillion of cash sitting in there. They are in great shape for whatever comes their way. And the other thing is, because of this, you are going to see a ton of mergers and acquisitions over the next 18 months, like enough to make your head spin off your shoulders. And a lot of them, because stock market is cheap. I think it's cheaper than it's been since 1985. Interest rates are low, money's easy to get to, and internationally the dollar's weak. It is just a panacea for acquisitions. And a lot of these deals are going to be done with companies that have a ton of money on their balance sheet, and they're going to be taken over in leveraged buyouts using their own money. So it is just there. It is so obvious, and it's already happening, but it's going to accelerate from here. What are they going to do with all that money? Remember there's Gomez, he could always blow up his own train set. I thought that was great. Share buybacks, ton of those. Increased dividends at a rate we've never seen. Ton of mergers and acquisitions. The first three are good for investors. The bottom two are good for the economy. We're starting to see much needed capital expenditures, and we're starting to see hiring gear up a little bit. Now, hiring's fifth. I don't mean it to be the fifth bullet point, but it is the lagging economic indicator. Look at the cash that's out there. Apple's got $100 billion. Chevron's got $33 billion. Johnson & Johnson, $12 billion. This is just in the sofa somewhere. This is unbelievable. Western Digital, National Oil Well. This is incredible. It has never looked like this. And then you hear, as a Democrat in the White House, that can't be good for the stock market. Well, that hasn't been true either. In Clinton's first term, the market was up 99%. His second 4 years was up 83%. Bush's first term was down 6%. His second term was down 26%. And so far, up 82% under President Obama. And the reason I put up these 6 points is that people hold them as gospel, and they're holding you back as investors. You're not making the right decisions because you're holding truths that really aren't true. And that's really the big problem in here. Well, this is true if you live in the South. Mason-Dixon line, renamed IHOP Waffle House line, kind of the new demilitarized zone for our country. And and my favorite bad math example was about 15 years ago. My son was very little. He's like 5 years old. And we're watching on ESPN. Jason Kidd comes out of the University of California at Berkeley in his junior year, and he signs with the Dallas Mavericks. And there's a press conference on ESPN. And they got the owner, the coach, and Jason Kidd. And they had the owner. It was before Mark Cuban. And he says, anything you'd like to say? And he gets the mic. He says, I'm real excited about having Jason here. And then they said, Coach, anything? He says, we're real pleased to have Jason in Dallas. They said, Jason, is there anything you'd like to say? And he brings the mic closer to him and he says, yes, there is. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to turn this program around 360 degrees. It's like, oh, God. The expression is 180, you know? My son is 5 years old. He goes, Dad, that's not good. They're going to be right back where they started from. And then the other problem we have is the people that are bad at math seem to be having more kids than the people that are good at math. I think that's another problem. So I have a new bumper sticker that says, if you can't add, don't multiply. And it's a new thing we're working on. We'll show them, get our math skills up. If I like the way the economy looks and I like the stock market, what don't I like? I don't like gold. I think as an investment, I think that's really way overpriced right now. I haven't seen anything last time I saw something that inflated, it was floating over Yankee Stadium. But this is unlike other commodities, virtually every ounce of gold ever produced is still around, and we're mining more of it every year. The only reason it's worth anything is that we think it's valuable. And it's advertised on late night TV, and I don't know about you, but the things I've bought on late night TV historically have not worked out. And I have a lot of Ronco products, that'll tell you. And Glenn Beck is doing ads for gold, and Warren Buffett is buying cheap U.S. stocks. This time, I don't know, it was close, but I'm going with Warren. This time, I love Warren Buffett. I also love Jimmy Buffett. Wonderful family, if you ever met them. I think I mentioned a couple of years ago, I had the best academic experience I've ever had. I brought 27 students to Omaha, Nebraska to spend the day with Warren Buffett, which was really amazing. It was 8 days after they had closed Lehman Brothers. It was an incredible experience. And I do a lot of public speaking, so I meet a lot of famous people. And sometimes you're kind of nonplussed when you meet them. But Buffett blew me away. He was very, very kind, very, very wise, very generous with his time. And the first question the students asked him, this is 8 days after they closed Lehman Brothers. First student raised his hand. He goes, Mr. Buffett, how bad is it on Wall Wall Street right now. And Buffett says, it is terrible. I've never heard such sad stories. I heard a story last week where an investment banker leaves his office in Manhattan, goes to his big home in Long Island, meets his wife at the door and says, honey, listen, we got to talk because I'm not going to get a bonus this year, and I don't think I'm going to get a bonus next year, and we're going to have to make some changes around here, and frankly, I don't even know how to bring this up, but darling, you're going to have to learn to cook. And so we can get rid of the chef. And she says, well, okay, but you're going to have to learn to make love so we can get rid of the gardener. So I fell madly in love with Buffett after that. That was the other thing I think is overpriced is bonds. I hear people all the time say, I'd never be involved in the stock market. It's very scary. So me and my wife, we get all the money in long-term bonds. These are the same people who are going to be calling their brokers in about 6 months and saying, excuse me, but what are these parentheses in my account? You know, it's this is unbelievable. When the economy gains a little bit more strength and inflation picks up, interest rates go up and bonds get killed. And people don't understand this because bonds have been going up for 30 years. I remember when I first got in this business in 1979, I had a woman call me and she said, Mr. Ricchiuti, you sold me a 4% bond. And I said, yes. And she said, are you aware that rates are now 8%? And I said, yes, I'd been reading something about that. And she said, oh, I want you to sell my 4% bond. And I remember thinking, yes. To whom? Who the hell's going to buy a 4% bond? So it's that's what people don't get, is this shows you how cheap the market is relative to, how cheap stocks are relative to bonds. This is the yield on the S&P 500, the dividend yield, versus the interest rate on the 10-year Treasury note. And they have crossed. They have never crossed. They have never, this is like the dinosaurs here, this is going back over here. They have never crossed. You're getting a higher rate of dividend yield now than you would as an interest yield on the 10-year Treasury. Stocks are very, very cheap relative to bonds. This was done by my graduates. It's so great because I have the smartest kids in the world and they do these things. I could never figure out how to put this graph together. But I've got a guy, I've had him for 2 years, and he's from Korea. He's the nicest kid, and he's come to the house for dinner a couple of times, and he's really funny, and he's going to graduate this May. And he's going out with a girl at Tulane that was used to be a point guard on the basketball team. She's like 5'11", she's blonde and everything. And he said to me the other day something I giggle about almost every day. He said this to me a couple of weeks ago. He says, Mr. Ricchiuti, you know, when we're walking through the quad, I keep thinking people are saying, hey, there's a good-looking couple. But they're not. They're thinking, hey, she just got a tutor. And I have been laughing about that every day since the last time. Where are we in this recovery? I think that'd be a good place to start. I love baseball, so I'd use I'm a big athlete. I don't wear a cup, I wear a quart. But I heard a great baseball joke the other day. Guys, team's losing 8-0 in the first inning. The manager comes to the mound. The coach comes to the mound, take him out, and the kid goes, oh, come on, coach, don't take me out. I'm not even tired. And he goes, yeah, but your outfielders are exhausted. And so some people think we're in the late innings, you know, maybe we're going to get a double dip or a soft patch. I don't think that's what's going to occur. Some people think we're in the middle innings. The average post-war recovery has lasted 59 months. We're at about 32 months. But I think we're in the early innings of the recovery because consumer confidence levels are still very, very low. And you do not end a recovery when consumer confidence levels are low. You end it when people are euphoric. It really is just the way it goes. Let's see. What keeps me up, what bothers me, first of all, is I see this oddly from a very odd perspective at a university, but immigration restrictions. You know, every year in this country, we send back 17,000 foreign students that have earned a master's or a PhD program in the United States. And this has come from 9/11, it's come from TARP, and it's created huge shortages of skilled labor in the financial community, in the technology community. This is crazy. These are the job creators. If we went out and looked for 17,000 people around the world, these are the 17,000 we'd bring back in. And so I think that's a real failing that's got to be addressed somewhere. And I know, I hear it all the time. I hear people say, Peter, my great-grandfather didn't come all the way across the Atlantic to move to a country that would be overrun by immigrants. So